So, I don't know about you all, but I love animals. I've always loved them. I've loved them since I was a kid. I grew up here in the Knoxville area and I used to go to the zoo with my family and see the otters and the elephants and the tortoises. I think at that time you could ride elephants, which I'm kind of glad they don't do anymore. This was me with my first dog, Pocahontas, aka Poca. I had hamsters. We had a chinchilla at one point. Don't ask me why. I always loved animals, and I still do. Sometimes, honestly, these days, I like them better than us. I'll be honest with you. But even now, on vacations, instead of great sights, I often go to see animal sites, natural sites. So I went to Japan this past summer, and one of the things I went to do was go to this deer park, the Nara Deer Park, where these famous deer live that are very, very friendly to humans. If you bring them a little bit of food, they will bow to you and then eat the food. And I thought I was going to have to walk all over the place to find these deer, but I had barely left the subway when bam, there they were. Like, I took that picture. That's how close they were. They were just hanging out all over the place. There was like an office building. They were all over the office building's front yard. I mean, it was incredible. And they just minded their own business, looking at you. Beautiful, beautiful deer. Also, when I was in Japan, I went out of my way to go to a cat island. Yeah. So there's actually like 8 or 9 cat islands in Japan. They are my people. And this one is called Tashirojima. It's quite famous, but it's an abandoned town on this island. A lot of the buildings are very run down, but the whole island, what remains of it, is all dedicated to these cats. Hundreds of cats. The minute you come off the little ferry, there's cats. You walk up this big hill, up a winding little road, and at the top of the hill, cats all the way along, just hanging out in the sun. At the top of the hill, there's a cafe. Very cute little cafe that sells food and souvenirs, cat-themed everything. And at the cafe, if you get there in time, they'll feed the cats lunch. And so that's on the picture on the left there. They take out these big bamboo troughs, and the cats all gather around. They come out of nowhere, and this dude feeds them, and it's so cute. It's so cute. And they don't fight with each other because they're used to this. And then a little ways off from the cafe, there's this shrine. Now, in Japan, there is a indigenous religion or faith called Shinto, and they have shrines to all sorts of natural spirits, shrines to rice, shrines to water, shrines to anything important. And this is a cat shrine. And it's a cat-sized shrine, so the little building is cat-sized, and all the little things in front of it, there's pictures of people's cats and little figurines, and this little guy was just hanging out, like guarding it, and I was like, you're some kind of spirit, man. You're some sort of sacred cat. Nice to meet you. Hello. Highly recommend. But in addition to these animal sightseeing trips, I also go and check out spiritual locations. So when I was in Italy a few years back, I again went out of my way to go to Assisi, which is where St. Francis is from. Beautiful little town, kind of off the beaten path, but it's turned a little bit into a tourist attraction. It's a lot of people selling Francis-themed merch and buskers in the street dressed as Francis with a dog they've trained. It's very cute. It's very cute. I had a lot of fun. It's a beautiful town. All the stone is this pink stone that's locally quarried or whatever. And there's this giant basilica. The whole left side of that picture is the Basilica of St. Francis, which is very ironic because he was a humble guy who took a vow of poverty. But because what he shared with people was so moving, they've raised this enormous basilica in his honor, which is quite funny and ironic. And inside, it's all artwork all over the place. It's a beautiful, beautiful town. So St. Francis, his feast day, I think it's called, or his patron saint day was yesterday, October 4th. He's the patron saint of animals and nature. His understanding was that God's creation included all animals. And our Christian neighbors and friends, our Christian members these days, especially more liberal-leaning Christians, they have this concept, what they call creation care, which is their way of addressing climate change, to say, we believe that God made the world, and so we should be taking care of it. It actually would be service to God. It would be honoring God's work and doing what it says in the Bible, which is to take care of the animals, of the plants, of each other. St. Francis is quoted as having said, "If you have people who will exclude any of God's creatures from the shelter of compassion and pity, you will have people who will deal likewise with their fellow human beings." So how we treat animals reflects how we treat each other, how we understand the sacredness of other living beings. There's this beautiful poem by poet Daniel Ladinsky, who wrote in the voice of St. Francis. It's often attributed to Francis himself, but it's not. It was written by a guy more recently. But the poem goes like this. It's called The Sacraments. I once spoke to my friend, an old squirrel, about the sacraments, and he just got so excited. He ran into a hollow in his tree, and he came out holding an acorn, an owl feather, and a ribbon he had found. I smiled and said to the squirrel, "Yes, dear, you understand. Everything imparts God's grace." And I just love that poem, that beautiful acknowledgement that the little treasures the squirrel had found and the squirrel itself are all part of this sacred, holy wonder of the world that we get to live in. That everything is holy and is part of the whole. Everything is wondrous and worthy of our love and our curiosity. Francis believed that no one was beneath that love. He worked with lepers and the poor and the animals, all of these people who others had tossed out. He helped his friend Claire found a women's order called the Poor Clares. Very interesting order if you ever look into that, order of nuns. But he encouraged us to be mindful of how much we own, because our possessions can obsess us. And it's easier to align with the divine when we have less noise, less distraction, and instead just notice the world around us, what we already have at our fingertips. St. Francis is my favorite Catholic saint. I don't know if I think you're allowed to have a favorite Catholic saint. I'm pretty sure, because Jane Goodall has also said her favorite Catholic saint is St. Francis. She's written a few books, but she wrote this one, Reason for Hope, in 1999. Reason for Hope, A Spiritual Journey. It's a really moving book that talks a lot about her own spirituality and her work with animals. I was reading this book this week, and she tells a few stories about her love of animals from a young age. One of them, when she was like 4, I think, she was curious about how chickens lay eggs. So she crawled inside the hen house and she waited. She waited and waited for a hen to come in and sit itself in its little nest and bloop, out an egg. Because she wasn't sure, like, where does an egg come out of this bird? And she watched. She was in there for 4 hours, and her mother called the police because she wasn't sure where she had gone. But Jane ran out of the hen house, so excited to share with her mother that she had learned from observation where the egg had come from. And Jane shares that some mothers might have just been upset and angry and scared and would have reprimanded her for disappearing. But Jane's mother instead just listened and appreciated the wonder that her child was showing her. And that kind of early instinct, that curiosity, that Jane says she said, isn't that just the making of a little scientist? About age 26, Jane became a waitress so she could save money to go to Africa to work with animals. Through a lucky set of circumstances, she got to go camp in the jungle with her and her mother and a couple other helpers to observe chimps, which no one had ever really done before at that point, not in the wild. She spent months, years out there. And she was untrained. She had no degrees. Nobody thought anything of this girl. A lot of people told her not to go because it was dangerous. But because she was curious and patient, she observed for the very first time that chimps use tools. They make them. They take a grass strand and they pluck all the leaves off of it, and they'll stick it in a termite mound and pull it out with termites all over it, and then eat the termites. They make, through object modification, they make tools and use them, which we, at that time, in the 1950s, we thought only humans. We thought that was a thing that made us uniquely human. And so when Jane Goodall made that discovery, it changed our definition of what humanity is. And people really doubted her. They didn't listen. They were like, no, you must have taught them how to do that. No. But she photographed it. And she proved it. This untrained woman, people tried to dismiss her, tried to dismiss that she named the chimps instead of numbered them, that she recognized they have emotions. They hug, they kiss, they pat each other on the back, they even tickle each other. But they also hunt. She was the one who learned they aren't vegetarian, they're omnivores like us. They hunt, they even kill other chimps' babies, and they even war between their communities. That these are a very complex species, very similar to us. 1% of our DNA is what makes us different from chimps. She eventually helped end government testing on chimps in the US. She was a scientist, but she was also deeply spiritual. She talks about this great power, this great spiritual power that helps guide the world and helped guide her to her work, her curiosity of animals, and her work trying to convince humans to take care of each other, of animals, and of the planet. She was recently, so she passed just this past week, and Netflix aired a new series. Hers was the first episode, called Famous Last Words, and it was recorded before she passed with the agreement that it would not be released until she passed away, so she could say kind of whatever she wanted to. And she said a couple funny things. Yeah, she's sitting there drinking whiskey. She says she sips whiskey before speaking engagements. It was great. It was highly recommend. But she talks about two types of alpha chimps. That one type reaches domination through aggression and violence, but that they don't last very long. And the second type uses brains and cooperation. If they challenge the alpha chimp to become the alpha, they almost always have a friend or a brother with them. They work together, and they last a lot longer as the alpha. And she noted that sounds a little familiar to our current political situation. She talked about sending certain people away on rocket ships, which was very funny. But when I was reading this book, I was really struck because we're talking about St. Francis this week, and she does too. I didn't know she talked about this until I was reading the book. I'm going to read you a substantial quote in here. Recently, I had a marvelous opportunity to share my feelings about animals in a new setting, thanks to Alan Jones, Dean of the beautiful Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. He asked me to deliver the sermon on St. Francis's Day, when the congregation take their animals, all manner of animals, to be blessed at the altar. What a fantastic experience. I took as my text Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." End quote. I explained that many Hebrew scholars believe the word dominion is a very poor translation of the original Hebrew word v'yirdu, which actually meant to rule over with care and respect, as a wise king rules over his subjects. It implied a sense of responsibility and enlightened stewardship. Then I spoke of the humility I have learned from the chimpanzees, how we humans are not quite as different from the other animals as we used to think. I ended with one of Albert Schweitzer's moving prayers for animals that are overworked, underfed, and cruelly treated, for all wistful creatures in captivity that beat their wings against the bars, for any that are hunted or lost or deserted or frightened or hungry, for all that must be put to death, and for those who deal with them, we ask a heart of compassion and gentle hands and kindly words. End quote. I was so moved by this and by Jane's talk of her spiritual beliefs and the way that those spiritual beliefs guided her to her work. Her love of animals, her love of the world gave her a mission. She talks about having a mission that guided her whole life and that changed the world, changed what humanity is, or our own understanding of ourselves. Now, there are very sacred concepts of animals throughout different cultures. The indigenous Hawaiian culture has a concept of kahu, or an esteemed guardian, a caretaker, an honored attendant of an animal, but not an owner. It is an honor to take care of an animal, not some sort of hierarchy. I have 2 cats at home. One is named Tezzy, that's him. I got him in 2021 after a year of the pandemic, and when I got him, I hadn't realized how touch-starved I had been that year. A year of barely touching anybody, and suddenly this little furry creature was waking me up in the morning and laying on my stomach and purring. He is so smart. Those buttons behind him, he talks with these buttons. We have them at home still. Every single day he uses these buttons to talk. He can ask for food, he can ask to go outside. He says, "Love you." He asks for scritches and to play. He's so smart, so smart. My other cat, Twinkle, is pretty. She's not as smart, but she tries. She loves food, she loves me, she's always near me. I got her as a kitten. Tezzy was already 2 when we got him, but I got her as a kitten. She's always near me. This was me working on today's worship service. You can see the St. Francis slide that we saw earlier, and she's sitting there touching me. She tried to climb onto my stomach, and I was like, "Baby girl, I can't type like this." But she blessed you all with her presence. Our cats, our animals, our pets, our birds, our tortoises, they're little extensions of our soul, our love. There's something about animal friendship. There's something about it. It's beyond. The trust to have earned an animal's trust is such an honor. To see them be comfortable, to be happy, to play, to love you, to bonk their heads against you, to smile and wag their tails when you come home. It is an honor. So I want us to take a couple minutes, and I know we're running a little late today, but I want us to take a couple minutes and turn to each other and share a little bit about our animals. You can share a picture or just tell each other about some animals that you love. Just a couple minutes.
See my nose when it's stressed. He's like,
The switch, if you haven't already, make sure to take turns. Okay, let's all come back together. Thank you for sharing your fur babies with each other, feather friends. I saw some folks going like this. Some of them are big and full of love, aren't they? Even for those of us who are not necessarily animal people, that's okay. I want you to be able to feel like you're part of this too. There are animals that are part of our lives even if we don't know it. And so even just appreciating them is important. There was a recent article in the New York Times, I shared it in our Facebook group yesterday, called On Pets, Moral Logic, and Love. And this author talked about how she used to think there wasn't enough to take care of all these animals when people across the world are suffering. How can we justify, being so precious with our animals when there are people starving? But then she got a dog. And she realized that love is not finite. That actually loving our animal friends, loving each other, helps us love the world more, helps us take action to help those suffering people, because they've helped fill our cups. They've helped inspire us. So, even in this time where a lot of human beings are suffering, where a lot of animals are suffering, we shouldn't we shouldn't take it for granted. It is a gift, and it is worth feeling. There is no sense to ever feel guilty for loving something. Now, like Jane Goodall and St. Francis, we UUs share some of these same values. Our value of interdependence reads like this: we honor the interdependent web of all existence. With reverence for the great web of life, and with humility, we acknowledge our place in it. We covenant, we promise to protect Earth and all beings from exploitation. We will create and nurture sustainable relationships of care and respect, mutuality and justice. We will work to repair harm and damaged relationships. And then, like St. Francis, we also have a key value of generosity. We cultivate a spirit of gratitude and hope. We covenant to freely and compassionately share our faith, presence, and resources. Our generosity connects us to one another in relationships of interdependence and mutuality. Our interdependence and our generosity, our memory that these things are part of how life sustains itself. Using these values to guide our actions and our choices makes a big difference. The UUA has recently rebooted an initiative called Green Sanctuary 2030. And they are asking congregations, if we don't already, to create a green team or a climate change team. There is a table in the social hall with a sign on it that says Green Sanctuary 2030. And if you are interested in being on that team, what we need is for folks to get together, to agree to do this together. It has to be congregate-led, to create a shared ministry agreement. And then there is some training and resources from the UUA about what to do next, how to do this, how to make sure that our congregation stays committed to climate justice, to love of the earth. Oak Ridge is at a developmental turning point, and so is our world. So the choices that we make today, the teamwork that we bring together, the love that we show to our animal, plant, and human friends, it's really, really important. Animals are a blessing, and so we have to bless them in return. Whether you believe that God created us to do so, or that we have evolved the ability, or that karma has spun us out for our good deeds, we must listen to the call of their voices, of the divine voice within us and beyond us. Whether it is preaching to the birds, or studying the chimps, or planting some flowers from the monarch butterflies, notice what parts of nature make your heart sing, and devote yourself, at least a little bit, to loving them, to taking care of them, to helping our mutual flourishing. This world is brimming even now with beauty and wonder. We are alive to love each other, to commit to the actions of love that help all life flourish. So let our animal friends guide our hearts and reconnect us to Mother Nature. May it be so, and amen.